Well, now on to news coming out of Bahrain. Saudi-backed forces continue their crackdown on protests across the country. Well, activists say several people have been arrested in clashes that followed a police attack on protesters on Sunday night. Demonstrators hit the streets in several towns and villages, calling for the downfall of the regime. Bahrain is in the midst of a revolution that began last year. In March last year, the regime called in Saudi forces to help squash the uprising. Since then, scores of people have been killed and thousands more detained. Joining us from Washington now is Dr. Syed Ali Wasif. He's with the Society for International Reforms and Research. Many thanks for joining us here on Press TV, Dr. Wasif. Now, the situation in Bahrain seems to have reached a stalemate. The regime there continues to crack down on people. It continues to arrest them, detain them, and then send them through military trials in which they get unfair sentences. Also, the people, though, continue to demand their rights, continue to protest on the streets. Where do you see the situation headed? How sustainable is this stalemate?
Well, unfortunately, it's going to go on like this, and I'm afraid that it's going to fade away slowly and gradually if this is going to continue. I mean, the pace of the demonstrations, because this is natural. People become frustrated. People lose hope, and then they go home. This is not the style and the fashion to bring down a repressive regime. I think this basically should be tackled in a different manner. It should be seen as a tit for tat by the Bahraini opposition forces. That is to address this issue. They have to convert this issue into an international armed conflict, as I have been saying time and again. I've said it time and again. Otherwise, what happens is that the psychology of the people of the West, the European people and the North American people, unless and until they see a viable demonstration, a viable bloodshed, they do not take notice of that.
Well, Dr. Wasif, many people have already paid the ultimate price in trying to seek freedom and democracy as well as their rights with regards to Bahrain. But let's face it, no matter how many guns come into their hands, the U.S. will continue to keep a blind eye on Bahrain because of the Fifth Fleet of its Navy there. There are strategic interests there involved, and there's more to the silence on the part of the West than just the fact that these demonstrators are too peaceful.
I beg to disagree with this notion. The U.S., had a presence in Iran in 1979, and we saw the result. The U.S. had a presence in and around Nicaragua. We saw the result. The U.S. is a neighbor to Cuba. We saw the results. So this is not a correct notion. So I think the opposition, I would suggest to the opposition of Bahrain to establish a government in exile in Moscow and try to seek recognition from Iran, from Russia, from a couple of African nations, and from a couple of Latin American nations, and go ahead with that. Unless and until the opposition is recognized, as I said in the case a long time ago in the case of Libya, and this is the case with the United States is using the same tactics in Syria. The opposition now has been recognized by different countries, and now whatever they seek, the weapons, the financial remittances, and training, and so on, becomes legal under international law. Similar case should be applied in Bahrain and in Saudi Arabia, in the eastern province of Saudi Arabia.
Okay, I'm afraid we're going to have to leave it there, Dr. Wasif. We have run out of time. We might have to agree to disagree there. That was Dr. Syed Ali Wasif there joining us from Washington. He's with the Society for International Reforms and Research. Doctor, thank you very much for your comments here on Press TV.